everyone. My name is Elaine Richards. I'm the president of Wyzant, and I am so glad you could join us for our first WyzChat. Today we'll be chatting and taking your questions about a topic that is on the minds of many families in the US right now, as COVID-19 puts all of our back-to-school plans in flux. And specifically, we'll be talking about how you can be sure homeschooling, which has been a lot of topic of discussion, is a good option for your kids, or maybe it's not. According to a recent Clear Opinion poll, 15% of the more than 2,000 families surveyed said they plan to homeschool their children in the fall of 2020. And that trend continues to grow as families are obviously looking for support. So we hope this chance to talk with experienced educators on Wyzant gives you some useful and actionable advice for your family. At any time during this Q&A, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat on the right. We have moderators who will pass them on to me, and our panel will try to answer as many of them as possible within the next hour. And so to get things started, I'd love to introduce our incredible panel. First, we have Pam Schaefer. Pam is a certified teacher in Pennsylvania and Texas. She holds 2 master's degrees from Wilkes University. Pam has taught middle school math and science and tutored homeschool students for more than 20 years with almost 1,000 hours as a tutor on Wyzant. Hi, Pam.
Hi, how are you?
Next is Arthur Eby. Arthur has a degree in chemistry from Westminster College and now works with National Geographic, producing educational videos that inspire children to learn more about the world around us. He is a world traveler to Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, and a whole host of other countries around the planet, fluent in Spanish, and also teaching a variety of topics, including sciences and math. Arthur has tutored more than 830 hours on Wyzant. Hi, Arthur. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Our third panelist today, Abigail Connick. Abigail pursued her education in math and statistics at MIT and SUNY Albany. She's logged an astonishing 8,000 hours tutoring on Wyzant, has spent 12 years as an educator specializing in a wide array of math, science, reading, writing, and test prep subjects. Hi, Abigail.
Hello.
And last but certainly not least, Patrick McGarity. Patrick has an MBA, or has a BA from Rice University and MBA from CU Boulder. He's a published author and full-time tutor with more than 7,600 hours of lessons under his belt. His philosophy is to help students find approaches to learning, studying, and academic success that are attuned to them individually. Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
So as you can see, we have some very esteemed panelists with us today. I'm very excited about this conversation, not the least of which is from my own point of view as a parent. We'll put each of our panelists' Wyzant profile links in the chat at the end of the Q&A, by the way, in case you'd like to reach out to them individually. But first off, thanks again to everyone for offering your expertise and guidance on this very important topic. We've got a ton of questions. So I'll just jump in and then we'll get into some of our attendees' questions as well. Okay, so in the spring, we all got our first taste of homeschooling from the perspective of simply having to do some kind of really school at home, right? And we covered this in a previous webinar, but I think we all agree that's not really homeschooling, that's really crisis response. Going into fall, parents have a bit more time and choice in what they want this academic year, or at least this semester, which seems to start with a basic divide of, are we looking at homeschooling as a primary learning, or homeschooling is secondary support to the remote learning or whatever your school or school district is providing? So Pam, maybe I'll turn to you first. Can you talk about the difference between the two?
Certainly, certainly. And looking back at the history, you know, public school started in the 1600s in America. And then in 1970, because before then parents were teaching their children. And then the 1970s, homeschooling had a resurgence. Now enter 2020, and we have the pandemic. And as you said, Elaine, so succinctly, the schools quickly responded. Some of the schools responded very smoothly. They already had a lot of digital learning in place, and the laptops were sent home, and it was a smooth transition. Some schools stumbled a little bit, but they all recovered. Mm-hmm. And some send home paper packets to students who needed that form of learning. And that was our spring. We survived. Moms and dads realized how courageous they could be. and we got through it. But here we are again, as you said. We're entering our fall, and the schools have responded in a variety of ways. I do teach students, thanks to Wyzant, across the globe, and in different countries and in our country, students are being offered a variety of choices, and in some schools, they're not offered any choices. It's strictly either online or strictly in school. So there's a variety there, and that, I hope, is why you're here to watch us and to hear from us and to talk over the question, because it's not an easy one. It's not an easy answer to arrive at. But knowing the facts, getting the information will help you make that choice, because your school might be offering only one thing. And then if you don't like that, your option would be homeschooling, the traditional homeschooling where you must follow your state's recommendations, your state's requirements of registering and following their protocol. So if your school is offering a variety, we hope that we help you today. If your school is not offering a variety, we hope that will give you confidence in your school. But if not, and you choose to go homeschooling, please know we are here for you. We're here to help you and support you. So I hope that answers the question.
I think that lays some great foundational considerations, right? There's a serious difference between support for remote learning or whatever's being provided at school and kind of going it alone, which clearly has some more, as you noted, right, state regulations and so on that can be quite complex. From what we've seen in the news and from what we've heard from our parents also, a lot of them are considering this notion of like homeschool pods or pandemic pods, right? So putting together either children from the same family or from families in the same class, same neighborhood to learn together, either online or in person. Certainly you could see how that, effort to share some socialization, right, some co-learning really helps. But Patrick, what are some things that you think families need to sort out in advance if they want to see if like they should be a pod?
Yeah, I guess the question is what are the options available? And that, I think, here in our local area has changed just in the last week from everybody's going back to school to now kids are going back to school in cohorts. So basically putting kids into pods to reduce the density of schools. And so 2 different cohorts, each going to school 2 days a week, and then having 2 days at home to get their work done, and then meeting online 1 day, everybody meets online. So that's probably what is I would think of as a hybrid model. But whatever direction you go in, realize there's a lot that goes on to educate your kids. And I would not jump into 100% homeschooling without some serious consideration. And I feel like I could teach, we've got 3 young kids, I can teach them anything, but do I have the time to do it? And can I do as good a job as the school? And I quickly come to the conclusion that I can't. Now I can supplement what they get in school quite a bit. And I can make sure that they get the enrichment, that we, cook at home and learn through cooking. We go on, we travel, and I can sit down with them and teach them extra math or have them write and review their writing. But I would be really reticent to jump into homeschooling if I didn't really understand what all of the obligations I was taking on and the responsibilities. It's a very difficult thing. Some of the challenges, to throw out some challenges, high school math has changed in the last 20 years. What's called Algebra 1 isn't what, if you took it 20 years ago, it's not the same thing. They've stuffed in a lot of statistics and probability that maybe if you went to school 20 years ago, it wasn't even a course, it wasn't taught. So they've stuffed more math and into courses that have the same name. They've pushed math to earlier years. Just the expectations are higher. The younger kids are going to need a lot more hand-holding. So that, we have a middle schooler who was able in the spring to get all of his work done and check, his to-dos and get it done. He's very focused on outcomes. And then a younger 4th grader who, he was a gifted and talented student before the outbreak, and he was failing. And, because he's just not very process oriented, very creative. And so it depends on the student. So I'd be very wary of going into full homeschooling if I didn't know what I was taking on. But a lot of us are forced into it, so we don't really have a choice. And so but I think there are opportunities to do some things that we can do to make sure our kids and our families thrive in the fall, where now we know what we're going into. There are some things, very specific things we can do to prep to have a successful, thriving fall instead of we got through the spring.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I think we all hopefully are a little better prepared to at least know what we don't know going into fall. One challenge that it seems is going to be clear again as parents consider like how much support their child or children need, as well as bringing together groups. And Abigail, I think you've encountered this some in your teaching experience. You've got a couple of students learning the same thing, whether it's a specific subject for school or a test prep or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It seems like, especially in a smaller group, there's some importance or some factors around, are these students at the same level? What's your thoughts on that? And if that is important, how have you tried to assess that up front?
So I have done group tutoring before, both for school subjects, but also for test prep. The majority of the time, the kids, they're friends, they're not super competitive with each other. They're usually at the same level. In that case, it works out perfectly. We can work at basically the same pace. One won't feel stupid, one won't feel like they have to show off, and it works out perfectly. Every once in a while, though, they may not be at the same level. They might think they are, the parents might think they are. Sometimes parents want me to do twin siblings for SAT prep, and they're just not at the same level. And in that case, unfortunately, it's not the best to do group tutoring. One, that's rare. Most of the time they are. So in the rare cases that they are at a different level, I usually just reach out to the parents. I say, hey, your kids are great. They have different learning. They have different learning styles. Mm-hmm. So would you be interested in doing separate learning? So I would always try group learning first, but if it's not, the tutor is going to be upfront with you. They want the best for the student, so they'll reach out to you. But most of the time too, most tutors are familiar with many different ways of learning. So if I know one student is getting one way, I can usually work with teach the other student a different way. And if they're slightly different, sometimes they can work out too. Sometimes one student will teach, hey, I did it this way, and the other student will do, I did it this way. So it can work, but if it's not a good scenario, the tutor will reach out to the parents.
And Pam, I think you've done this together and separate, or together but separate thing. How have you done this?
I'll try to keep it short. I've done it where the students can work together, and then if they meet more than one time a week, another day of the week, we'll separate, and one will start first and the other one will be second, and then the next week they'll flip.
Got it.
So it gives us a little one-on-one.
Yeah, so a combination of both things for the kids, which seems really great. I think another thing that's on a lot of parents' mind as well is engagement, right? I mean, especially when we're talking about virtual learning, there's kind of this reality that is, as wonderful as it is for us all to be able to see each other on screen, it's not quite the same as being in person. And certain subjects, I think, are even more difficult. Sciences, for example, which I think we all think of as best taught in kind of a hands-on way, right? When you don't have that opportunity. Arthur, I know you engage a lot of students in science also through your National Geographic work. Do you have some thoughts on how do you keep kids engaged in a topic, particularly online, particularly science, but just overall, right? I think a lot of parents want to, I mean, really, you want learning to be fun, right? You want the kids to respond positively. What have you seen? What have you done that's worked?
A lot of different things. Every student is unique in their own way. Yeah, every student has their own learning method. Every student has some things a little differently that they're interested in. So my job as a tutor is to keep them interested, yeah, but to learn their learning method, learn, maybe kind of what they're interested in, learning what they think about and what is related to them, learning about things that they are, or that they're close to, like places in their natural area, whether that's in Florida or Alaska or, you know, anywhere, all over the world. I have students in Moscow and Italy too, and stuff like that. It's very, very diverse. It's a huge world. And yeah, I just love to share all these things about the things that I know. I've taken some specialized courses in things like elephant psychology. And I heard about this course one time, and I thought it would be such an interesting course to take. And I actually learned a lot about like elephant politics and elephant genome testing and stuff like that. These are some of the interesting facts that I like to share with some of my students about elephants and other animals, animals that you can, you know, find interesting facts about how, you know, if you dig in a dry lake bed in Africa, you can find fish there. They're just hibernating under there in their own little pod. You know, so there's a lot of interesting facts out there.
Wow. I feel like we could have a whole separate webinar on Arthur's fun facts here. This is crazy. I'm going to I have so many questions, but I'm going to hold back.
Can I say one?
Yeah.
Can I say one thing, Elaine? Just to interject, the whole basis is based on this assumption that online is not as effective as in person, and that's an assumption that many people have, and I would take issue with that. I think, yeah, for certain things, yes, but for math and science, or even writing, finance, there are certain things that I think online, if done well, is done better than in person. And, you know, we've got whiteboards, we've got videos. The videos maybe aren't as important, but just using Excel together and screen sharing. And it really, if I got as intimate into somebody's Excel document as I did in person, I'd be like sitting in their lap or something. And so, you know, you can move really fast with online in a way that you can, you know, go between things. I think in some things with some tutors, it's more effective than being there in person. Or at least if it's not more effective, there's no difference really. And tutoring, why is tutoring so successful? Why has Wyzant grown so much? The study came out, I don't know how, it's a while back, but back when Wyzant first started, there was a study that I'd noticed, and I don't know if Wyzant published it or if it came from somewhere else, but tutoring is about 270% more effective than classroom teaching. 2.7x. That's huge. That's a game changer. And that's the reason why most of our founding fathers and mothers were taught by tutors. And the tutor would come and live with you for 2 years, and then you learn everything from that tutor, and they go off to somebody else and you get another one. And tutoring is highly effective. And the fact that it's online, I think it's much more flexible. There are certain advantages to the online that is, in some ways, it's even better. And so anyway, just to throw that in there.
No, thanks for bringing that forward. I think that's a really good point. I think we're all sort of predisposed to think that COVID has created horrible situations, and this is yet another, but I think you're right. It does sort of create a great opportunity for personalized learning that is proven to be very effective.
But the assumption is of many students and parents that it has to be in person. And I met with somebody for the first time 2 days ago, and they said, it has to be in person. I'm like, all right, I'll meet with you. And so we met at a Panera, and at the end of the meeting, he's like, well, do you want to meet in person or online? Because he's like, you know, we could probably do this online.
Yeah.
So it's once you get past the relationship, then, you know, or the concern, I think online is fine.
That's great. That's a great point. We certainly believe that, by the way. Wyzant has been online first for quite a number of years now. Pam, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to share the uniqueness of online learning, like all of you have shared. I used to teach clarinet. I was the clarinet major for a while, and I just began 3 different students, an adult and 2 children, on clarinet, and it's been a joy. I also did a celebration. I knew during this COVID, it was such a very stressful time for parents and for children, that I thought, what can I do that would be upbeat? And 3 of my students had hamsters. So we had a hamster Zoom, and I played hamster music. Would you believe there is a hamster dance? And I dressed up like a hamster, and we had a ball. So there are many unique things to do. And I've done science lessons with water displacement for volume. I had to remember, though, to color the water.
Fair point.
Yes, very unique things you can do.
That's great. Listen, I think you guys are bringing forward some really lovely things about how to make learning fun, which hopefully is also something that we can all like lean into here when everything else is so difficult, which leads me to think about two questions. One is, on a lot of parents' minds, you know, we pack our kids off to school every day for 6 hours, give or take, right? And but when we're doing this kind of at-home thing, is that really the number of hours that we should be shooting for? It probably varies based on age of student, age of child, but curious about that. And how much do we need to be really intently focused on like doing the class? You know, for those of us who came from sort of an old school, like, you know, we drudge our way through the textbook, darn it. Is it really have to be so firm, or are there other ways to incorporate, you know, more fun, more experiential? But let's start with the first thing. How many hours? I mean, you know, are we trying to replicate a 6-hour day, a 7-hour day?
I don't think so.
What do you think, Pam?
Some of the research I did with what homeschoolers recommend, or what's recommended in the homeschooling world, it's an hour per grade level of intense learning, which I thought was way under. But remember, they're learning outside of the formal, what you're counting as hours, because when you're out there in the field or looking at the mountains or hiking and gathering nature items to put into a portfolio, you're still learning.
And I think the brain needs a break, right? So, you know, working with students at different ages, the attention span of somebody in middle school is maybe an hour, 45 minutes. High school, depending on the student, it can range pretty widely from 1 to 2 hours. I just got off a call this morning with a student. We met for over 3 hours on statistics, which, you know, that's a lot of statistics, but she's a pretty driven person. It's in the nature of that person. But generally, I would say no more than 2 hours, no matter who you are. I have students in AP chemistry who want to go sit in the library for 8 hours. No, don't do that. Go study for 2 hours, take a break. Your brain actually processes what you're experiencing and files it away, and that's part of the learning. Rest is an important part of the learning process. Sleep is an important part of the learning process. So go work, then go for a run or go for a bike ride, then come back and do some more work. So think of it as not 6 or 8 hours. Gosh, that would be torture. In a day, think of chunks. What is, for each child, what is their attention span? What are they passionate about? Because if they're doing what they're passionate about, you experience this idea of flow and you forget about time, right? And that's one of the things that drives happiness, right? So depends on the student, but somewhere between 45 minutes to 2 hours of a chunk of learning or doing. Could be doing math exercises, could be writing something, reading. But generally more time does equate to higher performance, especially in math skills. You know, I've tracked it in the classroom that kids who did spend more time on the math exercises performed better and grew faster. So more time reading. The more you read, the reading is the #1 thing you can do for your kids or have them do. It affects every subject. It improves math somehow. Yeah. I don't know how.
So let me clarify, Patrick, because so I hear you saying like nobody can sit here, or very few can sit here for hours at a time straight, which I agree. I could not sit in 3 hours of sleep.
Yet we insist that kids do it at school, right? This is the insanity of it.
That was that too. But so are you saying, you know, maybe do 45-minute blocks and do several blocks during the day, or?
Yeah, well, for younger students, yeah. So think of it as do a block, take a break, go for a walk with the dog or with the family, come back and do another block, have lunch, but separate out the learning with time that's not learning, not active learning. You can still learn just doing anything. Having a walk in the park, you can learn, but do something where it's not sitting doing like heads down learning, you know, watching a video or doing math exercises, writing a composition, but break it up and you'll get much more results. You'll get more effectiveness, and people should be doing that anyway. at all levels.
Got it. Got it. And
But
then
the length of time varies by student and by level, I would say.
so if we were saying like, I mean, let's just get really tactical here. We're talking like younger elementary, first, second, third grade, how many hours? I mean, Pam, I heard you say like an hour per day, but then that's got my high schoolers doing 12 hours a day.
Yes, that doesn't make sense. I rethought that,
Yeah.
and I just picked that up when I was doing some research before our seminar, and yeah, that doesn't jive. I took it through grade 4 and it made sense, but after that, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
And remember, kids in schools have specials, right? You know, they go do music and they go do art and they go, so you can go do math exercises and then go do the art first, and that maybe stimulates the math. But, you know, then do, you know, music, practice.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is like, let's, you know, again, depending on age of the child, less for younger, more for older, you know, a few hours of blocks of like intense traditional subject type learning, and then fill in with some other things as well. That sound roughly? Okay. Okay. Arthur, I mean, you seem to be our experiential learning expert and really tailoring into the stuff that probably kids want to do more than, well, I don't know. I'm guessing you found a way to make algebra fun. I wish I had you to teach me algebra, but what other things have you been able to share to help them break up the, you know, the traditional book learning?
Yes, I completed the International Baccalaureate program at the Journey School in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which was a very hands-on school, and that's the way I've always learned. So that's the way I've always taught it, and I think it is a very good method of teaching. And I'm very, I guess I've been trained very well to do it because that's how I've learned. Really, you know, hands-on learning. In one of my algebra classes, we actually had to go outside and go hiking to gather data on like snowflies in the middle of winter, and climb up some mountains to get this data. And it was so it was so funny. It's like, what? This is math class. We're on this mountaintop and we're gathering data here. So it was really cool. And that's how I would do things a little bit when the parent allows. I get very close with my students, and you know, we go out. We don't just stay at home that much. We go and do things. We start up a beehive because I'm a beekeeper too. You know, we do things like that, and kids learn about that too. Now with the lockdown in place, I'm not meeting with anyone. Really, all I can do is just share things over the computer. We don't go anywhere or do anything, but I share videos, you know, sometimes on Wyzant, sometimes with my iPad or iPhone, where we do a FaceTime video call, where I share things about what I'm doing. If I'm going down the raft in a river or something like that, just getting kids interested, just, you know, showing kids that, oh, this is something interesting to do also. It's something fun to do. With a lot of other students, oftentimes I'm just using Google Maps or Google Earth to just show kids where I've gone originally, and just show pictures of what I've done here, and show them, oh, you know, this is something cool to do. This is what we do. This is the world. This is how we learn about it and stuff like that. Very, as much hands-on as I can get. Still kind of digital, but still very hands-on, very applicable.
Leaning into those virtual tours, if you will, around the world. I know a number of museums and zoos and whatnot have all made those available now. That seems like a great way to kind of bring the world in, I guess, when we can't necessarily go out. I'm going to switch over to some of our questions that are coming into the chat now. And this one I think is just really, really pressing on so many folks' minds. So I think this is speaking to the experience of, I've got my child in school, they're doing maybe some hybrid or remote only. So there's, you know, a limited amount of Zoom instruction, let's say, and there's assignments coming in, and there's, you know, some amount of scheduling. How have you guys been able to help? I mean, what do you, I think there's an equal piece here. Let's be honest. I'm a working parent. So many of us are. there's frankly just a big like time coordination management piece here that like, sorry, I'm trying to work a job and then like maybe put some food on the table, right? Can we get some help here? What do you thought, Abigail?
So I have a lot of experience with this before COVID, after COVID. A lot of my students, they have tons of assignments. Sometimes they'll be struggling in school. And I know parents are really busy. So a lot of times I have the parents basically just send me all of their information. I get their note packets. Sometimes they'll give me their teacher's email. If they feel comfortable, I can email the teacher, figure out when they have upcoming tests. Sometimes I'll find out every test is on Friday. So we meet on Thursdays. So basically they just pass the baton over to me and I try to handle as much of that as I can. One great thing about Zoom, and Wyzant chat, you can do screen share. So sometimes they're on Schoology, they might not know like where to find stuff. So I'm familiar with Schoology, Google Classroom. We do screen share and say, oh, let's go over to assignments. Let's see what you have. We make, a lot of times we'll do like an Excel sheet or just even like a Google Doc with all the assignments I have. I share it with their parents. We make a game plan for what we should be doing. And we prioritize the biggest point things we do first, and we just go down the list. So tutors love helping with this. Tutors they don't want to be out of the loop, they want to be in the loop. So I bet if you reach out to a tutor and say, I really need help organizing my student schedule, I don't have time, or I don't get it, I haven't been in school for a while, they'd be more than happy to help. Yeah, they're used to it too. They're familiar with all the different platforms. So just reach out to them and most of them would be very, very willing to help.
Got it. Patrick?
Yeah, so I think one area that Wyzant tutors have traditionally worked with students on quite a bit and continue is on test prep. And test prep, you might think of it as SAT test prep, but it's just preparing for tests, preparing for quizzes. And what's amazing is there's not really a lot of instruction there's a lot of instruction in schools on content, but not a lot on process. And so just working with students at the high school level, middle school level, I mean, in middle school, or maybe not, in elementary school, there's a test, you show up and you take the test. There's no prep. It's like, oh, it's this day? Oh, I didn't know. Then you get to middle school, maybe you kind of look at your notebook for 30 minutes and review. You get to high school. As you go through high school, the expectations increase. By the time you get to the end of high school, it's simulating college. And in college, the irony is, for every 3 hours you have in a seat in a classroom in high school, you have 1 hour in a college. And you're not learning on your own, but you kind of are. It's very self-directed learning in college. And whereas most high schools are free, most colleges you pay for. So it's a paradox. But just know you can apply. And then you go to grad school even. There are things that people do in grad school that you can do in high school. People build outlines. Every law school student, every med school student, many business school students develop their own study guide. That you can do that in high school and you learn it by building the study guide. And so learning what are the expectations of how much time should I be spending as a junior in a high school preparing for an Algebra 2 test. A lot of kids are just completely an order of magnitude away from where they need to be. If they're saying, well, I don't really do anything or spend 30 minutes. No, you should be doing 3 hours or whatever it is, or based on where you are, maybe 8 hours, right? Possibly. But it's different for different students. Everybody learns at a different rate, but just working with students to help them understand about the process of learning and preparing for tests. How do I go about writing an essay? Where do I start? Whether it's my college essays or just an essay for English class. And what is good writing? So all of that, understand, well, how does writing work? Oh, it's iterative. Oh, it's not, I don't have to just come out with the end point the first time. Oh, that's really a relief because I thought I did. Right? So helping kids know more about the process, I think, is something that Wyzant has done and will continue to do. And that's where parents, too, can maybe challenge some of the expectations and realize that the kids, sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And so if you have a 9th grade student, the number one thing you need to do as a parent in the fall is make sure everything gets turned in. Because the biggest issue with, you go from middle school where the teacher gets after you if you don't turn something in because they only have 30 students or whatever. You go to high school, you're one of 100, 150 students that teacher has. They're not going to chase you down. You'll find out at Thanksgiving that you're failing. And so it's every fall it happens, and it's going to happen this year. So if you've got a 9th grader, make sure they turn everything in. Get them the first week. Our oldest son, he's now 19, but our oldest son, I went ballistic on him. When the 2 weeks in, he had missing assignments. He was failing one class. I'm like, what are you kidding? And he turned it around. They just don't know. And so help your students, make sure, challenge some of their assumptions about the amount of work, because it's always increasing. What worked last year is probably not enough for the coming year, because the bar is raised every year until you get to, you're kind of, you're learning with a little bit of direction from a professor, and a TA is helping you, and you're working in groups, and you've got maybe some expertise of a tutor to help you out. But that's it. And that's what we're really pushing down now. This is what kind of excites me about what's happening now. We may go back and say, 5 days a week in a classroom is great, but I can't get anything done. Just like if I was in a conference room, like meeting to meeting to meeting, I've been in that situation. When do I get my work done, right? If I go from meeting to meeting to meeting. So I think 2 days, this hybrid model gets me excited. I think there's an opportunity for more exploration. Kids, more project-based work that Arthur thrives and helps students with. There should be more of that. If kids have 2 days a week to do anything, hopefully it's not wasted, and they're doing things that they're interested in. And everybody, you give them some general guidelines, and then they go off and do what they're passionate about and do great stuff.
Well, Patrick, I hear you, and there's a certain part of me that really couldn't agree more, and loves that notion on so many levels. Myself, living a lot of life in a conference room, right? I get it. But as a parent, that kind of freaks me out. Like the notion, right? Just the basic normal circumstance of keeping up on some of these homework, and did it get stuffed in a bag? Did they turn it in? I think a lot of schools and teachers were fairly permissive in the spring about attendance, about turning in work, about tests and grading. And I think we're not likely to see that kind of leniency again in the fall. So I feel like there's this huge, to your point, same thing has been happening for high school freshmen and kids, as they rise every year, but even more this year than the past. Like there's a piece of like keeping track of and accountability and overhead, I think, that parents are going to be called to do. I think many of us are looking at homeschooling or homeschool pods, right? Because we're like, I am not going to be able to keep track of this by myself. Can I get with a group? Can I get with some professional help that can help me keep track of that?
Yeah. But even tutors, if we're doing it well, we're pushing it back to the students. They gotta, if I have 30 different students on different subjects, I can't manage their business, but I can show them how to manage their own, how to make sure, and maybe help them prioritize. Yeah. Like, all right, here you got a lot to do. All right, let's break it down. So definitely help them think through it. And so that's why I think even, online is even better, because we can see how each other think in online in a way that when we're in person, it's not as fluid, and we're not kind of seeing as many things as quickly.
Pam, what guidance are you able to give parents and students along these lines, and what kind of resources and support? Because I think this is a huge issue on what so many are struggling with.
So guidance in general for this whole scenario?
Well, a lot around time management, assignment management, accountability. I have joked with some folks that I think the real benefit of support structures like what Tutors on Wyzant offer is partially academic and partially just buying me a happy dinner time. Shoot, one less dinner where we have to say, hey, did you turn in that assignment? Did you do the algebra homework?
Right. Yes, I do have some thoughts, and I want to take this time to go on record that I am totally off on those hours that children need to spend on the work task. Forgive me. It should be goal oriented, and my goodness, if they met the goal, give them a break. So let me go on record for that one. I think routine. There's some things I wrote down that I wanted to share. And one of them would be routine. You're going to face a new normal this year with your children, whatever it looks like. And you you might consider talking with your children about this. What is it going to look like? They're stressed as well, and they're worried, and you need to make this more of an adventure. And we will get through this, and we will come out the other end. But in the meantime, everyone is in the same scenario. So how are we going to use this situation to come out strong? So use your creativity, use your children's creativity. One of my students has launched a company during this time. Just promote their ingenuity and creativity. If you're on Facebook, Homeschooling or online learning, groups offer a lot of suggestions of virtual tours. You won't be able to see Arthur's elephants, but in person, but you might be able to catch him on a video, right? So when we think about the children going back to school or not going back to school or having a varied situation, try to keep their routine the same, as normal as you could from what happened before our pandemic. Example, every fall you buy your child a new backpack. Well, they obviously don't need maybe a new backpack now. Please buy them a new backpack. Buy the materials, set them up for their own school in the home, if that's what the scenario is going to look like for you, and find out what do they need. Do you need some sticky notes? Yes, let's get those. All right. And listen to your child, because what they think they need, it might be just a short trip that would make a big smile.
Sure.
So let's see what else.
My wife, just to throw something in, my wife noticed that nobody was at the store. I don't know if it was Walmart or Target, but nobody was at the store buying school supplies. She was in shock. So go out and get the school supplies before everybody realizes, oh, we forgot.
Right.
Before there's a run on loose leaf paper, right?
Because you still need paper.
Notebooks.
Yeah.
And whatever you choose that your school is offering, I'm looking at this as a public-private school situation, that you choose one of those. Find out if you may change, and if so, what that date is. Mm-hmm. So you have a clear idea at the first trimester, for instance, you can switch your learning style, and you know your children best. Where will they thrive the most? What works best for your family? We're all different, and rely on your neighbors and your strength of your fellow people to create those learning pods, where perhaps on Tuesdays from 10 till 2, they're at someone else's house that's in your medically acceptable pod of people, and you can just share the load. Yeah.
I think a lot of parents are looking to, as you said, share that load of both organization and covering the material. I think we're many worried about sort of covering it all, right? Whatever that means. And I'm not even sure we really know what that means, except we feel like there's concern, right, over academic learning loss, and how does this set them behind this year and in future years. Someone in the chat asked, and I think this is interesting, given that we know from spring, and we don't know exactly what fall will look like, but in spring there was, less testing, less grading, less of that kind of thing. Would you recommend the parents themselves use some other methods of quizzing or just assessing, making sure that like some information is kind of getting in and retained? I'll throw that at Abigail. You want to take a shot at that?
So, yeah, definitely. You don't want students going through the motions but not retaining anything. Yeah. That might help. That might be okay for the grades now, but it won't help later on for other math classes, SAT. So they should do that. I know probably as a parent, that might be really hard to do. Because if you don't know the material, you might not know what they should know or not know. So I would definitely reach out to the teachers, see if because I know a lot of the times they recycle note packets every year, tests every year. Say, can you send me some of your old tests? Have your student take it, and the student will be able to know, and especially I bet the teacher could send you the answers too, see if the student's getting it right or wrong. And I'd also, this is kind of like preparation for this year, but even if you're unsure if your student needs a tutor, I would reach out to a tutor before you need one. A lot of times people say, my student's going to take chemistry. I know I thought that was hard. They might find it hard. Can I call you if they need help? So it's nice to have a tutor on call like that. And then they can also help assess if the student knows what they're doing or not. Because I know a lot of times my parents I work with, they complain. They're like, oh, so-and-so thought he was going to eighth midterm, but he actually got 65. I wish he knew when he didn't know stuff. And sometimes people are just not capable of that, especially when they're younger. So if you hire a tutor, they can kind of point out their weaknesses without making them feel bad before it's too late. So I would definitely reach out to teachers, tutors, and I think a group text would be great. I know a lot of my students are in group text with their classmates, so they kind of talk about stuff that might help them understand better. But I know Facebook next door, they also have chats with other parents. So other parents might be teachers, so they might be able to help you find those resources to help test your kids to make sure they're absorbing what they're learning. So I think it is really important because the whole point of school is learning, and you want to make sure that's happening.
Yeah. Patrick, Pam, Arthur, where do you guys stand? Would you test? Would you lightly ask questions over breakfast? Oh.
Well, I gave a test today to one of my students who is going into third grade. She's in Spain, but I worked with her on her times tables and found out that she has some homework this week. So we'll be working on reviewing some times tables this week, and she'll be very excited to earn all her stars next week.
So that's not a crazy notion, okay?
No.
No, but I think a lot was thrown overboard in the spring that I don't think we're going to do the same thing in the fall. I think there was a lot of scrambling because of the short time frame, and understandably, even the AP tests, they changed the scope of the test with the understanding that some schools would not be able to get to everything. But you can do that once. I don't think you can do that in the next semester. And so testing is not going to go away. And testing really, as Pam mentioned, testing really performs a few functions. One is a diagnostic, so it identifies strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And so, I'll use tests just to gauge, find, gaps and holes and squishy parts that we need to work on. And then we go work on it. And how do you know, if you've got a kid, let's say you don't even have to know math. If we assign them exercises on Khan Academy and they come out of our meeting and they know how to do them, they need to practice them. So, studies show that math is a two-step process. The light bulb has to go off and you need to understand it. Then you need to practice it from 25 to 40 times on average. Some people a little bit more, some people a little bit, but you need to practice it correctly. And that's the advantage of things like Khan Academy and Brain Genie. They don't let you do it wrong. Back when I was in school, I could have done my homework completely wrong and, practiced, the goat path, paved the wrong goat path. And so I think you can look at you can see the list, say, all right, go click on that, show me you can do it. If they could do it quickly, kind of without thinking, any of that math at the elementary, high school level, that it's just fluid, it's reflexive, they're done. You don't need a test for that. You can just see it. You don't even need to know the math. It'll tell you, bling, you got it, right? And so that's the performance, as Pam mentioned earlier, it's not about time, it's about capabilities, it's about portfolio. What skills in math can you do? How's your writing? What science do you understand and can make use of when it comes down to it? So
we have another question in the chat, and I think we touched on this in the beginning, but I think it's worth exploring a little bit more. So we started off by talking about the difference between truly homeschooling, right? Like I pull my student out of the district, the public school, or whatever it is, and I take it on myself, and that involves a fair amount of following state regulations and requirements and other things. It's reasonably involved, right? And I think that's the feedback from you guys was if you must, you can, but just know that it's pretty involved. Can you share with me that from the families you've seen or your personal situations, like what would be the real benefits of doing that? Both now, obviously, probably most folks now are even considering it because of public health issues. But I mean, both now and in a pre-COVID time, what's the thing that usually pushes people over the edge to decide, like, yeah, this is, I know there's overhead involved administratively, et cetera. I would do this. And if I went this way and I said, okay, now I have to, you know, find some help on Wyzant or other places to help me pull this off, like, is that doable? Patrick, you want to start?
Yeah. So, is it doable? Absolutely. People do it all the time. You know, it really comes down to an individual, student, family standpoint of, is the student, is it a good environment for the student? And is it, you know, is the parent up to taking on the responsibility? You can outsource a lot of the work to tutors, but, you know, there's you know, there's cost with that. And so if you did all of it, to outsource all of it, but it could be done. I don't know. There are lots of reasons. Why do people do it? I think, you know, there's the health reasons that any students who are maybe they're, you know, really at high risk would want to do that. People for religious, faith-based reasons say, you know, I don't want my kids in that environment. There's that. There's the, you know, students with special interests outside of school. There's just sensitivity. Certain students are, you know, maybe just going through a season where it's not good relationships at their school. I mean, there's many different reasons that people do it. Is it doable? Yes. I think it's easier than it used to be. I think there are now online packages that even the school districts have provided that, you know, you don't have to just figure it all out, that there's kind of the standard, you know, kind of vanilla approach that you can do.
I would throw out there, by the way, so I'm thinking about this, right? And we also started talking about homeschool pods as well. So it's one thing for me to decide that I want to keep my children home and homeschool and all these things. If I'm going to do that with a friend with similar age children or even another family member, it seems like, based on what you're saying, like we have to kind of align on some of our goals and desired outcomes here.
Yes and no. I think the homeschoolers that I'm familiar with are generally, they belong to either a meetup group or some sort of a group where they get together and they do enrichment together. So kind of the extras, that it's not the basic, because everybody's at a different place in math and reading, but the fundamentals you get through the online curricula. But then, you know, let's get together, and so that the kids don't miss out on social interaction and working in teams. I'm sure in every city there's multiple meetup groups that you can get together with other homeschooled kids, and, you know, they bring in somebody who's going to do a science experiment, or, you know, there are people who do the more things that you can't just do online.
Right. Your one-person science fair.
Yeah, if my lab experiment blows up, you know, online, it's not as exciting as if you're there in person. So, so I think that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Well, we are coming to the end of our time here. I'd like to close out with just maybe, you know, one final question for all of you, and we'll just go around the virtual room here. If you had one piece of advice for parents going into this fall about, you know, a mindset they should have, or a thing they should be on the lookout for, or a thing they should be optimizing for, whatever it would be, what would that piece of advice be? And maybe, Pam, let's start with you.
Well, I did have a heads up that there would be a closing question. So I did get my flashcards ready, but, you know, they're backwards. So I was going to show all of my wonderful audience here how we teach, you know, with flashcards with the camera, and it's great too. But I'm going to close with 3 verbs: be, seek, and know. So be strong, be courageous, and seek support as you're doing today, and seek encouragement of others and within yourself, and know that you're not alone and we're here for you.
That's great. Arthur, do you have some final parting words for our folks today?
Yes. I've been trying to keep up with a lot of the questions here. I don't know if I've been trying to type some of the questions here. I don't know if I'm gonna get to them all, but if after the session, these questions will still be live, and these people, anonymous attendee, Amy Whitemore,
I'm sure we'll get to those, but do you have any final comments here on what you would advise students or advise parents to do this fall?
I have a quote that comes to mind that I kind of thought of that has been coming to me a lot recently, and I've learned over years of tutoring experience that the hardest thing you will ever have to do in life is the thing that you don't want to do.
Oh.
And I hear this all the time. I hear from organic chemistry students and general chemistry students and math students and stuff like that. This is too hard. This chemistry, I don't want to do it. It's too stressful. It's too much work, blah, blah, blah. And I realize it's not that it's too hard. It's not that it's too much work. It's not that it's too stressful. If it is too hard or it's too stressful, don't do it. That's all you have to say. For this is more for college students than for high school students. Most high school students don't necessarily have that much of a choice, but college students kind of, I feel like a lot of them are requesting help tutoring in things like advanced topics like organic chemistry or general chemistry because they want to be a doctor or something like that. They want to have that maybe prestigious job, but all that work to do to get there is so much work, and they don't want to do the work, but they want to have that. Maybe they do want to be a doctor. You know what? If as stressed out as they have to be, and as much time as they need to have tutoring, I would say maybe it's not worth it. And so I would say, maybe they don't want to do a degree in chemistry or biology or something like that. They want to do a degree in theater or music or other things that are more fun for them. And I would say, do that. Yeah, really do what you want to do.
Follow your passions. That's really great life advice.
Absolutely, yes. For more high school and middle school students, maybe they're not exactly sure of what they want to do yet. So I would say the importance of that is to really open their eyes to the world and teach them about all the different things that they can do, and help them focus on the goals that they want to have to do really what they want to do, what they choose to do, what sounds interesting to them. And that is something that we as tutors try to teach when the parent allows, not just to teach, but inspire, stuff like that.
Inspire is a great word.
Yeah.
Abigail, parting thoughts?
So I agree with everything everyone said so far. But I would say just make sure, I know when I'm struggling with something, if I'm dreading something, my biggest thing, I wouldn't ask for help. So I would definitely make sure as a parent you're asking for help, reaching out to people who may know more about homeschooling, but also encourage your students to ask for help. They could be afraid. So just, if they need help, have them reach out to their classmates, to tutors. And then very big thing would be stay organized. It's very easy to get behind on tasks, as we already mentioned. Maybe have a day every week, maybe Sunday, to have catch-up day. Catch up on assignments you can get to, and then plan for the week to work on assignments. I think if you do those two things, it'll make the year, or at least hopefully just the semester, much more smooth.
And Patrick, round it out. Bring it home for us.
Well, if I had one thing, I would say, don't be afraid. That we're living in unprecedented times, but with change brings opportunity. And I'm excited about the hybrid model. I wish I had the hybrid model when I was in high school, because to have 2 days to explore, if it's truly working in teams and exploring, and a day that we meet online, think of the flexibility that it provides. Now, it can be, for some students who maybe don't have the discipline, it can, we have to watch that. But I think it's a huge opportunity that could unleash massively greater amounts of learning than if everybody goes to school for 5 days, 8 hours a day. So don't be afraid. When you think about acting and deciding for your family and for yourself, act out of love, not fear, because love and fear are opposites. think about the habits that you're forming, especially, classroom teachers. I'm a great tutor. I'm a terrible classroom teacher. I can't do 30 students at the same time, but one-on-one, I'm great. And by classroom teachers, especially at the elementary level, what do they do the first couple of weeks of school? Nothing but habit formation. Lining up, little things, lining up, making sure everybody knows how to get to their seat without talking. All these things, where do you put your paper? Focus on building those habits in the first 2 to 3 weeks that are going to set up your kids. Sow a habit, reap an outcome. Build the right habits in your kids and in your family structure that's going to help you thrive in the fall and get past this survival mode. And I would say, reach out to tutors. But I would say if you're a person of faith, don't forget you're allowed to ask God for help and do that. And he wants you to, because, he does give us more than we can handle, and because he wants us to lean on him. So that would be my advice.
Thank you. Some really inspiring comments from everyone. Thank you. Thanks on behalf of our audience and everyone here at Wyzant, to our panelists for such an engaged and thoughtful discussion. We know, as we've just talked about it, like the personalized learning is really the most effective way to learn anything, and particularly that's coming through now as much as any time, or more than any time in the past. So I'm sure your experience and advice today will go a long way toward helping families determine what's best. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us. If you learned something new, something useful, something interesting about elephants or otherwise, in today's WyzChat, please let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'd love to talk to you. And if you're looking for your own tutor or expert to help you make your homeschool plan or your remote learning plan or whatever you might need, we'll be placing links to each of our educators' tutor profiles in the chat. We also have thousands of others who might be a good fit for you and your family. And we also have our blog, on which we've posted a number of articles about learning and about remote learning that could be a helpful resource to you as well. We'll be making this video available on demand on Wyzant's YouTube channel. So if there are friends of yours who would have benefited from today but couldn't make it for whatever reason, please feel free to share it with them. And we will catch you on the next WyzChat. Thanks, everybody.